Welcome to the Property Management Success Podcast, where we interview leaders in the industry to uncover the secrets to profitability, efficiency, and achieving true freedom, whether it's your time, money, or lifestyle. I'm your host, Tony Klein, and I'm here to help you build a wildly successful property management business. Let's get to it. Welcome back to another episode of the Property Management Success Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Pete Neubig. Pete is the former co-founder of Empire Industries Realty and Property Management based in Houston, Texas. He has sold that company, and we're going to dig into that a little bit. But currently, Pete is the co-founder and CEO of VPM Solutions. VPM Solutions is an online platform that connects the real estate industry with virtual team members across the globe. Pete, good friend of mine, welcome to the show.
Tony, thanks so much for having me on, man. Been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I am too. So, so I want to jump right into an experience that you had that was very similar to mine. You grew a business, and you and your partner, and we can talk a little bit about partnerships and what works there and what doesn't, but you guys grew your property management company to the point where you were attractive to a buyer, and you eventually sold that and exited. And I want to talk a little bit about that. So there's so many topics that I think is going to be great info for our audience. But first of all, I just want to welcome you, and just happy to have my friend on the show here.
Thanks for having me. And I don't even know if you know all the details on the sale and all that stuff. So I'm pretty open. Anybody who's talked to me about it, I'm pretty open about it. So let's discuss. So the intent originally, and I know you do this with your coaching clients and stuff. It's like, what's your vision? Where do you want to go? And our vision when we first started Empire, we didn't expect a third-party manager. And I know I'm going way back, and I apologize for this, but our vision was to own.
Yeah, let's get into the beginning here.
Our vision was to own 500 homes, and we were going to manage our own homes. That's kind of where we were investors. We didn't do third-party management. And what happened was we bought all the wrong homes, like Class C minus, D plus, D minus homes. And we ended up buying so many really quickly. We bought like 31 in less than 2 year time frame. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, we need to get a make ready done. We need to get this one leased. We have to evict these 14 people. We need to, this huge major issue is going on. And this is like back in 2009, 10 time frame. So the internet wasn't what it was today. We really didn't find a lot of single family management companies here in Houston through the internet. So we just decided we're just going to build a better mousetrap and create our own. And what happened was, fast forward a year later, and we were managing third parties. Steve Rosenberg was my business partner, and he would just like tell investors, oh, we can help you. We solved our challenges. We can help you solve yours. And we were third party managing. And what we found out at the end of 2011 was that we realized that we made money third party managing. We lost money on the houses because we bought the wrong houses. And so we're like, aha, BFO moment, a blinding flash of the obvious. We should do more third party management. And that's how we started. So then the vision changed. We went to our first NARPM event, and we heard somebody say, yeah, once I got to 300 units, I was profitable. So that became our new vision, right? Like we didn't sit down and like draw it out like, oh, like that's great. Like we want to be profitable. That's our new vision. Once we matured a little bit as a company, then our vision became, we wanted to get to, 1,000 units in Houston. And then eventually what happened was Steve's vision changed from my vision. That was the kind of the begin of the end of the partnership. Steve wanted to be kind of like Mind. He wanted to be in 20,000 units across the country. And we brought in a third party named Brad Sugars. You guys should Google him. He's an amazing person. He owns a company called Action Coach International. So he owns the franchise for business coaches. And our business coach, Doug Winnie, connected us with Brad. And we were the first Action Coach client where Brad actually invested. He ended up partnering with us and getting 10% of the company. Once that happened, Now we're supercharged and we went into other markets, even though we were not doing very well in Houston.
So Pete, I want to let me interrupt you just for a second. Let's get some clarity around this. So you started with this vision to grow your own portfolio. Then you said,
Correct.
okay, I'm going to do my own property management company, and we're going to do locally. And then you were growing to the point where you thought, okay, well let's actually take this on a little bit bigger scale.
Correct.
How big were you when you brought in
Brad
your
Sugars.
consultant? Yeah.
Yeah, we were probably at that time, we were probably around 600 to 700 units. All single family. We didn't do any multifamily. We didn't do any HOA stuff. So everything was 1 to 4 single family homes.
And then one other thing I just want to point out, something that you said was you went to a conference and somebody told you when they got to 300 doors, they would
Yep.
be profitable. And that to me, it's interesting because there's a plateau around that 300 mark where you really have to change your business model
Agreed.
from, 0 to 100, 0 to 200. You can kind of get away with running things a little bit loose. You're the guy in charge. You're doing everything. And it almost is what I see is there's a place where you become less profitable at that plateau. And some people hit it at 200, some people hit it at 350 or something like that. But it's interesting that you guys didn't see the profitability up front, and you thought, okay, well, if we could just grow to that 300, get some size, that's where the profit would come from. Did you guys take into account the team that you'd have to build?
Yeah,
And
we can. That's a whole other. Like we can go into a whole other
yeah,
story on that, Tony, because that brings into what our structure was when we first started to when we got to the 300 to when we got to 1,000 units, and
okay, so
that's a
let's
whole
circle back
other.
around to that then, because I'm really
Okay.
interested, but I want to hear the story about
Yeah, I think the
how
moral
we
of
did
this
the exit.
story, the moral of this story is that partnerships are great when everybody has an alignment in vision, and then when the alignment in vision is not the same, partnerships become difficult. And so with this new partner, this 10% partner, Brad Sugars, now we're really trying to supercharge the business. And you know this, Tony, if you're growing your business, chances are you're not very profitable, right? You're investing, if you're doing it right, you're investing a bunch of money back into the business. And, I had quit my job in December of 2012. And now we're, let's call it like 15, 16. I'm not paying myself very much. The business isn't making any money. We're always stressed out. And now we're trying to grow into Dallas and Fort Worth and Austin. We're trying to go into all these markets. And so finally, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Meanwhile, Steve wants to go the other way, and he wanted to actually go outside of Texas, which just scared me because I'm like, I'm a broker in Texas. I'm not a broker in Oklahoma, and I don't know if that, so it just added so much more that we need to do. And so what ended up happening was we ended up running the business so poorly that in December of 2018, we were out of money. So think about this, Tony. We had over 800 units at the time. I think we were actually over 1,000 at the time. We ended up trimming. But we had, I think, close to 1,000 units at the time, and we're not making any money. Matter of fact, not only not making money, our credit line is almost maxed out to the tune of $250,000. So for those of you doing math, that means I'm minus $250,000. I own a firm, and I'm negative $250,000 at 900 units. So when you hear this thing at NARPM where it doesn't, you can grow yourself right out of profitability. Completely true. So I end up another whole other story, but I end up restructuring the business, and I end up kind of moving Steve to ownership level, and I got him out of the business, which is a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing was that I quickly, within 6 months, by June of 2019, we paid off the credit line. So that told me that my business made over $500,000 if we ran it correctly. The way I did that was I got rid of a lot of team. We were bloated. And I also got rid of, we were spending about $20,000 a month in marketing. I brought that down to about $2,000 a month. And we had the same amount of opportunities, and we were closing the same amount of deals.
What do
We were
you what
not
do you
investing
what,
wisely.
what do you think on the trim? So you trimmed $18,000 off your marketing. Was it that you'd already established some momentum there, or was it that you guys were just, because I've done this myself. There was a point in my career where I wanted to be rich, but I also wanted to be famous. And I was spending money to be famous. And what I mean by that was I was putting out more marketing material than was necessary to drive the amount of leads that I wanted to create. And it just became somebody would approach me with a marketing method and I would just I
Sign up for it
sign
and
up.
never do anything with it.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
had a ton of that. So, we signed up for stuff and then like it was like a checkbox thing. Like, oh, we did this. Like, well, did you do anything with it? Well, we signed up for it and we sent out an email or something. Let me
Yeah.
like this was the best. So I had a marketing manager and his name was Kevin. And I come to Kevin one day and Kevin was really he worked closely with Steve, never worked closely with me. So when I started taking over, he was very nervous because I have a different management style than Steve. And so I went to him and I said, hey, let me ask you this. Why we're running a commercial in Dallas. How much is that costing us? Well, I don't know. All right. Well, can you find out? So he comes back. It's like, I don't know, like $1,000 a month. I go, how many leads are we getting from that? He goes, well, I don't know. I said, cancel that commercial today. He goes, we're on the contract. I go, I don't care. You're canceling that commercial today. So that was kind of, I mean, what's the big term going on right now? Waste, fraud, and abuse. Yeah, not fraud, but there was definitely waste and abuse happening. And I found this over and over again to the tune of like, oh my goodness, like we literally, like I said, to the tune of about $18,000 a month. We had marketing specialists that work for us. Their job was to go out to different events. Well, I found out that they had a company credit card and they were basically living off our company credit card. And so once I canceled the credit cards, they both quit. Shocker, right? Because they were literally living on our credit card. So that's the stuff that I found that was just running rampant, and that's why our lead flow went from about 130 leads down to about 100 leads. So we lost about 30% of leads, or right around there. But our opportunities stayed around the same, and we were still closing around 30 doors a month. So basically, nothing really changed when I did that. But anyway, so when I moved Steve out of the business, we were able to run a much more efficient business, but now whether Steve was upset or whether I really don't know, but Steve all of a sudden decided that he wanted to sell Empire. And we ended up getting approached by a couple of firms, mine being one of them. And originally I kind of pushed back. But now here's what happens. When you are a partner with your good buddy that you've been friends with for 15 years, you started all these different businesses together. Steve and I flipped houses together. We owned houses together. We owned apartments together. We owned Empire together. We had done a lot together. And he wasn't just an investor buddy. He was a friend. We'd vacation together. Like, he was a friend of mine. And he was adamant that he wanted to sell. I did not want to sell. I didn't want to sell. But my options were either A, I basically force him not to sell, right? Or he sells his portion, and that would hurt our relationship. And I just didn't think that was the right way to go. Or B, I find out I buy him out. The problem with buying him out was that because we had run the business so poorly, remember I just told you I was negative 250 the year before, no bank was going to loan me the money. Balance sheet looked terrible. So then the third option was I go find somebody to buy him out. And I just didn't want another partner. I'm like, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm just going to exit. What's the worst that happens? The worst that happens is I get a bunch of money in my pocket. I get a job with the company with Mind, and I roll and I just I'm in great shape, right? I get a big salary and I have a bunch of money in my pocket. What I didn't realize at the time, though, Tony, because I really didn't know what to do next. Like, Steve already had his plan. Like, when we exited, he started his coaching business, and he was rolling. He was happier he was happy as a clam. I did not really want to work for Mine, but it was a path. It was the path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. So I took the job, and I quickly realized that I did not, quote unquote, move the needle. I was not anybody whose opinion mattered. I ended up being I was the Eastern Region Vice President of Operations. And really what that meant was I was a senior property manager. doing things that I had given up on from Empire a long time ago, like taking like the biggest thing I really hated in property management was taking escalations. People were unhappy. Just never. It's not my bag. It's not my personality profile. And so for me personally, here I am, $1 million in the bank, 150,000 plus dollars coming in, a year in salary, and it was the most unhappiest I have ever been in my life. And so I made it 18 months. I don't know how. Matter of fact, I think they actually wanted to get rid of me 6 months before they actually did. My boss was trying to keep me. But I ended up exiting. And the month I exited, I ended up going live with the first version of VPM. And that's how that worked out. So the moral of that story is if you're not really sure what it is you want to do, I highly recommend before you exit to figure that out. And whether it's, hey, I just want to live on a beach, I want to live in a van down by the river, whatever it is, you just need to know what that next chapter of your life is, because when you don't have a plan, it really can affect you emotionally and mentally.
That's such a key part to being an entrepreneur. And I'm sure people who aren't entrepreneurs also suffer with this, but I've done some research, with my long distance runs and things that I do. I put out these big goals that I'm going to hit, and I do the same thing in business. But I've done some research and some study with people that make it to the Super Bowl. And you would think, okay, these young kids, all their lives have been working towards playing in the Super Bowl. They go through, little league, then they go through high school, college, they make it to the pros, they wind up being on a team that gets into the Super Bowl. And you could understand how the people that get into the Super Bowl and lose could suffer some depression because they had their shot and they missed it. But what a lot of people don't realize is there's a similar level of depression for the people that get into the Super Bowl and they win, they make it. Because all their lives they've had this one goal that they've been working towards, and then they accomplish it and they don't know what's next. And most statistically, if you were on a team that won this year, you're not going back. And I know that's changing a little bit. We've had more teams getting back into the Super Bowl, but just because the team got back doesn't mean that each one of those players gets back. And so one of the things that through those studies I've looked at, just really leaning into not what's my next goal, but what's the goal after that. I have to have something that's pulling me through, almost like my current goal that I'm working towards is the checkpoint on the way to the next one. And then once I hit this one, I'm putting out that one after that, because your story is not uncommon in the property management space, in the entrepreneur space. And I think it's something that doesn't get talked a lot about. There's people that are out there trying to sell businesses or thinking that they've made it when they sell it. But then, what do you do next?
It really was something that I knew was going to be a challenge and just didn't realize how big of a challenge it was going to be. And it made me a bad team member, honestly. Like, mine did not get the best of Pete Newbig, and that's a direct reflection of me, and I didn't give him the best, and but I'm happier now than I have been. And I think also, Tony, I'm over 50 now, and I think when you hit your early 50s, you start thinking about legacy. You start thinking about what else, like, all right, what can I do for others? Like, where do I leave my little, fingerprint on the universe? And when you sell a business, it's like, okay, well, shoot, what do I do next? And so I personally think owning a property management firm is one of the greatest businesses you can do. And I feel that way because I really believe, like, you're taking somebody's biggest asset, an investment property. In many cases, not all, but in many cases, it's actually worth more than what they have in their retirement account. And so we are responsible for their retirement. We're responsible for leaving their kids, a legacy and really responsible for their assets. And then I look at the other way. When we have residents and we give them a home to live in, we're responsible for that home. We're providing a lovely, hopefully a loving home. We're providing, shelter in a home. So I just don't think there's much better you can do in a business other than helping businesses reduce their expenses and find people jobs so they can change their lives. So VPM is, like, to me, like the equivalent of what we do in property management. So I still think we add a lot of value. So I get a lot of that. And also we also hire people, and you have, at Empire had 35 people. They paid their bills because we had a business.
I want to dive into what you guys do at VPM, because I think it's a really important part of running property management businesses. And through the framework that we have, which we call it the championship formula with our coaching, and the two of those core components that we work through out of the 7 are making sure you have the right positions detailed out, or your roles and responsibilities. And then once we've identified the positions that we need on the team, and I don't just mean, we need a property manager, we need a maintenance coordinator, but really getting clear on what the expectations are of that role, the KPIs around that role, getting really clear on that. Then we need to go out and make sure, just like in a championship team, we're not just filling the position, but we're bringing in the very best that's going to contribute to the success of the overall team. And I know that since you left Empire and went full in on VPM Solutions, I know those are two categories of the property management space that you've leaned really heavy into. And I'd love to get your insights around making sure we have the right person doing the right roles and responsibilities. And so tell us a little bit about how VPM operates and how you go about helping property management companies do what I just described.
Yeah, so VPM is basically a marketplace that connects the property management industry with remote team members in 120 plus countries. That's kind of what we do. But we have a recruiting service that really helps. And then we also have specific training courses on the platform where remote team members can take those courses. They can test out, they can pass the test, and they get a certification. We also have just industry resources. So we have job descriptions and KPIs and all sorts of stuff out there. But let's talk a little bit about the hiring process. And I know you and I have talked about this on a podcast or two, and we've talked about this in the green room. And I was at Lead Simple last December speaking about this. And I asked everybody to stand up. And I said, if you do not have, now remember, these are process people. Lead Simple is a process automation tool. I said, if you do not have a hiring process, sit down. There was about 100 people in the room, and about 3 stood up. 3% of the people who believe in processes had a process for hiring. Now, if you think about it, Tony, property management is a service-based business. We are only good as our people. And if you do not have a hiring process for your people, the chances of getting good people, the right team, as you talk about, a championship team, gets reduced big time. And so some of the things that we do, especially if you use our Gold Glove service, is we help, we use our hiring process for the property management company. But I also teach this, and our White Glove service is free, and we kind of give you the blueprint for a hiring process that you can build to help get those right people in the right seats. So what does that actually mean? Well, you touched on it, right? Your culture, your core values, or your characteristics, right? What are the 3 top characteristics for your high performers on your team? If I'm looking and I say, man, Tony's been with me for 3 years, and man, I wish I can clone Tony. Well, what's the characteristics that Tony has? And also Ann. Ann has those same characteristics. What are the characteristics that Tony and Ann have, and how do I duplicate those? And we've been getting coached by a man named Mark Murphy. He wrote a book called Hiring for Attitude. And what he found in his research was 89% of people fail because of attitude, 11% of fail because of skill. So you can have the guy, right, who's got the skill, but if he doesn't have the right attitude, he's not the right fit in the culture. He doesn't deserve a ticket on the boat, so to speak. So understanding what your core values are as a company, or even if you're an individual, what are your individual core values? Who is the person that, that you want in the foxhole with you? Who's the person that gets a ticket on the boat? So that's your core values. And Mark created these 15 attitudes that you basically can look at, and then we can build questions based on which attitudes you check. So even if you don't have core values, we can help you develop your characteristics. Super simple. You read the thing, you pick 3 of them, you send it to us, and we can create interview questions based on those core values. And then we know the way they answer, are they a high performer or a low performer based on those core values. So somebody, Tony, who may be great for PM success may not be a good fit for VPM, depending on how we run our businesses. The biggest challenge, though, so core values is a big challenge, but the biggest challenge I've seen is, you hit it on the head. People, I'll give you, this is typical. Hey, Pete, I want a remote team member. Great, Tony. What are you going to do? I don't know, but I've been told by so-and-so and so-and-so that I should have a remote team member. Just because they're cheaper, right, and it's labor, doesn't mean that you should have a remote team member, especially if you don't know what they're supposed to do. So when you have a job description that says answer phones, all other duties assigned by manager, you don't know what they're supposed to do. So how would they know what they're supposed to do? That is a recipe for disaster. The more detailed you can get on what they're supposed to do, then I call that the instructions to the seat, right? So the core values is the ticket on the boat, and then you need to get in the right seat, but the instructions are as the job description. And then how do you know if they're in the right seat is with personality profile. I'm a big DISC guy. I know there's predictive index and there's tons out there. I like DISC. It's easy. I understand it. And it's worked for me for 20 years. So I kind of go with that. So now core values, the right person in the organization, right person on the boat, your set of instructions, your DISC profile gets you on the right seat. And then how do we make sure we row in the right direction? KPIs, like you said. So every job role in your organization should have a maximum of 3 KPIs. If you have like 11 or 14 of them, like I did when I first started the business, if the old mantra is everything is important, nothing is important. So you might have more that you want a KPI, but what's the 3 that you're working on? And once you have one of those down pat, bring another one in, and you can change them, you can switch them out. But you should really have a maximum of 3 KPIs per role. And everybody in your company should have a KPI. And I could even go one step further, Tony. I believe that if they exceed the KPI, there should be a bonus structure in place.
So I want to ask you, because I have this conversation with people when I first start working with them. We'll talk about their KPIs. And so we'll say, if some of them don't have KPIs. Some of them have KPIs, but they don't put it in like a scorecard, or these are the expectations, but we're not really measuring it. And so what is your thoughts and opinions on tracking KPIs that we're not hitting? Because I see a lot of companies come in when I start working with them, and they have those 3, 4, or 15 KPIs in your case per person. And yet they're just tracking, and it's creating this culture of mediocrity where, we don't hit our KPIs, but only 40% of the time are we hitting, or 60% of the time. And then we're just like, we missed it. Okay, on to the next one. Yep, we missed that. And then on it. To me, it feels that it ties back to that culture that by tracking KPIs and not hitting them, you are reinforcing a culture of mediocrity.
100%. And the thing with KPIs is, first of all, okay, do we have the right KPI? Are we measuring the right thing? Somebody came to me one time and they had, I don't know, it was like 15 or 20 KPIs for maintenance. And I'm like, well, I have 3 KPIs for maintenance. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? And then KPI that. So just a quick example, right? So you could KPI when a ticket comes in, how quickly does it get responded to? That could be a KPI, right? How quickly does it get dispatched? How quickly does the vendor take it? How quickly does it get responded to? How quickly, you can do all of that. Or you can have the KPI of What's the percentage of tickets that get completed within a certain time frame? Right? And so everything else has to be done before the ticket is completed. And including for us, for Empire, it was, before after photos and a invoice. And so we couldn't close tickets until we had an invoice. Well, what did that do? That made us make sure that we got the invoices. We had a problem where vendors wouldn't invoice us for 90 days or a year. Now we got invoices within the same week. Huge. But here's the thing. Now I bonused because of those KPIs. Once they got exceeded, they got bonused. But because I hired based on my core values, I never had to worry that they're going to circumvent the process and the policies to hit the KPI. So that's the first thing. So now I only have 2 or 3 KPIs. I know all the stuff that needs to get done. And then, of course, you create reporting, trust, but verify. The other big issue is, Tony, they grab a KPI out of the air, right? Okay, so I'll give you an example. At Empire, I wanted to so bad have a KPI on turn days, but I never had the start date and the end date in the database. How can I get that, right? So I would literally just say, hey, I have a KPI for turn days. It can't be measured. Or it might take me 48, hours to come up with a measurement. And then so it's got to be easily on a report that you can then put into a scorecard. Now, if you're not hitting your KPI, I think there's only a few reasons why you're not hitting the KPI. The number one potential reason is that the KPI is just way too out there, right? Like, Tony, I want to lose 20 pounds in the next week. It's not going to happen, right? So the KPI has to be achievable. If the KPI is so far out there, nobody is going to try and get there. They're going to try to get there for a couple of weeks, maybe even a month, and then they're just going to fall off because it's not even possible. So I'll give you an example. Lease renewals was something that we lacked with, and I think we had about 30% of all residents on a lease renewal, on a lease. Well, we wanted to get to 90%, but I bring in a new girl. I do not make that KPI from 30% to 90%. What I did is I made it 34%. Then it was 40%. Then it was 42%. So you can move the goalpost, but it has to be achievable. At the end of it, she was at 96%. We stopped it at 92%, and we gave her a bonus when she hit over 92%, and she was doing it fantastic. So if you don't have the right KPI, if it's not even close to being achievable, that's going to bring you down to that mediocrity that you talked about. The next reason that you miss a KPI just could be a valid reason. It could be that it's summertime and there's so much work, we're just not able to hit the KPI. Valid. There's solutions we could put into there, but it might be valid. It could also be that Tony was on vacation last week. Why didn't he hit his KPI, right? And then the third thing could be you just have a personnel problem, right? You might have the right person, they might be in the wrong seat, or you have the wrong person. Now, any one of those, you should be able to ask your team, what can we do as a team that will help us achieve our KPIs? Do you see what I did there? Normally, what do people ask? Why did you, Tony, not hit your KPI? And now Tony he's a victim, and he goes to blame, excuse, and denial, and he is not thinking of solutions. He's thinking of excuses. When I say,
it throws
Tony,
them into defensive mode.
100%.
Yeah.
What can we do, right? So now I'm on the same side of the table with you. What can we do, or what can I do as the owner of the company, as your boss, your manager, whatever it is? What can I do to help you achieve your KPI? And now we become victors, and we take ownership, accountability, responsibility, and we think towards solutions.
So it's funny because I actually also have 3 reasons why we don't hit a KPI. So here's mine. They're slightly different, but it brings us to the same place.
Okay.
So for me, when a company's not hitting a KPI, it's either a system problem, meaning I have not provided the team member with the proper tools to be able to do what I'm asking them to do.
Right? I love that one.
Or I've given them too much work. There's something wrong with the system that I've created. So it's either a system problem or it's a training problem, meaning I've given them the right tools, but I have not effectively trained them on how to use them. And the third area is a performance problem. And the reason why I like that is, as the business owner, I get to own 2/3 of the solution, right? Yeah. So I get to say, if we're not hitting a KPI, Have I given them the right solution? Have I given them the right system? And if they say yes, then great. We can move on to, okay, have you been properly trained? If they say no, then we break down to what do I need to do for my teammate to help them achieve the KPI that we've asked them for? And if they say yes, they've got the right system, then we ask them if they've been properly trained. Is there anything that we need to help them learn to understand better? And if they say yes, I've been properly trained, well, now we've put them in a position where,
They
we've
have to
given
look
them
in
an
the mirror.
opportunity. What's that?
They have to look in the mirror now.
Yeah. We've given them the opportunity to give us feedback on how to help them do their job better. But at the end of the day, if it's not a system problem and it's not a training problem, then it's a performance problem. And now I can look for what are my solutions in moving those people into a different seat or off the boat, as you say. But by addressing those first two areas first, it gives them the opportunity to open up and share a legitimate reason why we might not be hitting that KPI. And I think that's my job as the business owner, is to make sure
And
my
I'll,
team is
I'll tell you
performing.
one mistake I made early on, and tell me if you actually have done this. You have a person, they're not performing, and you change the process for them, or you change a policy for them. And I used to do that early on. Today, I'm like, nope. If I'm not changing anything for you, this is what it's supposed to be done. And next thing you know, it's like, oh yeah, you're literally like changing everything, and you're messing other people's roles up because you're taking stuff from this person and putting it to them, all because at the end, what has to be done. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not in the right seat.
So I'll take it a little bit different approach. So I always say and I'm going to give some definitions here just so people are clear. So there's a difference between a policy and a process. So the policy is what we do and why we do it, and the process incorporates the procedural steps, the step-by-step actions that we take. So as the business owner, I'm going to own the policies. I get to say that, and I call the policies the rule book. Those are the rules under which we play the game of property management in order to win. That defines success. The process, I will give people some leeway to give me feedback on adjusting the process to accompany or to accomplish the outcome that we're trying to accomplish, as long as it still upholds the policy. I don't let the team members change policy, but I will let them give me information on, I haven't been in the front lines of going out and doing leasing and leasing up properties or being the showing agent for years. And so, and most business owners haven't either. And so if I'm looking in my brain or in their brain, they're thinking of the way it worked 3 or 4 years ago when they were in that position. And you hire somebody, new technology comes along, HOAs change their rules. Like, I want to give my people the ability to give me input. And that's why we always address, is it a system problem? Like, is there something we can change about the system first? Then we can talk about the training and then go back into the performance. But I agree with you partially that policy shouldn't be changed. Where I disagree slightly is I want them to have the ability to help me and give me input on the individual procedural steps that we should take to make this function be as efficient and as effective as possible.
No, I'm in agreement 100%. Policy's owned by me. You can't change it. Process, you can definitely change the process because you're, like you said, you're sitting in that seat, you're doing it. I want to be known about what you're changing so that I make sure, because a lot of people know their process, but they don't know how it affects the rest of the company.
Sure.
So I just want to be notified. I'm like, yep, that makes sense. Go ahead and do it and move forward. And I love when people change the process. I love it. Even if it doesn't work, Tony, I love it. You know why?
They're
They have
taking ownership of it.
Taking ownership.
Yeah.
And if once you have somebody in your team takes ownership of something, you got them. They're a high performer.
Yeah. Okay, I want to go back to something. I love the KPI conversation. We could spend 2 days
yeah.
talking about KPIs. I want to circle back to something that you said about the hiring for the attitude, the culture. One of the things that I lean really big into, and it's something that you've already mentioned, is I talk about bringing the cult into the culture. Like, if you were to start a cult, which essentially people work for your company for the paycheck, but there also has to be something else. There has to be some reason why they're connected to your business because, especially with remote team members, if they can work for you remotely, they can work for anybody remotely, as long as their skill set lines up. But so what keeps them in your company? What keeps them working at the clients that hire through VPM? What do you think companies need to do more of, and where do you think they're missing and dropping the ball with bringing people in as part of that hiring process?
Yeah. So first of all, getting the right person, right, for your culture and your core values. That's like, let's say you do that. Well, now how do you keep them engaged, and how do you keep that core values, or how do you push that core values down all the time? I think that a lot of people, when they hire a remote team member, they hire a VA, and it's less and less, but there is still a small amount of people that, like, they just hire a VA, and they don't see the remote team member as a remote team member. They don't see him as part of the team. They just see him as kind of like hired help.
Yep.
It's the wrong way to do it. Now, the majority of people don't do that anymore. I think back 10 years ago, that was kind of the thought process. Now you hear remote team member more and more. So people are getting away from that. What I see, Tony, a lot of times people will hire somebody, they'll spend a little bit of time with them, and then they'll only talk to them once a week or whatever. And I think that every time you're in front of people as a business leader, you should be talking to them about your core values. I really believe that. I'm a big fan of it. So we have a monthly meeting. Every month we have a company meeting. Everybody's on it, including remote team members. And the first portion of that meeting, we always go over our core values. And I'll call people out and I'll ask them what their core value, what our core values are. What does it mean to them? Can they point to somebody else in the company that's embodied one of our core values? So keeping that, letting people know about the core values and keep pushing it down from the top down will get people to understand what our core values are. So if somebody is not living by those core values, they're going to exit themselves out, or the team is going to push them out. We also do a daily huddle, and in that daily huddle, the majority of we look at, we call them taps 2x4s in Mack trucks. What's a tap is a potential problem that's tapping you on the shoulder. The 2x4, you tapped on the shoulder, you didn't do anything about it, you turn around and smash you in a 2x4, and then you still do nothing about it, then the Mack truck runs you over, right? So that's kind of like the levels of problems. So our daily huddle is really geared for two things. One, identify taps and solve them. And two, to build our core value in our culture, to keep pushing that down. The reason why when you hire through VPM, one of the values of hiring through VPM is that they're a direct hired contractor working directly for your business. Meaning they do not work for VPM in any way. All they are is they just get paid through our platform. So that means they work directly for you, the business owner. So you get to push your core values down. If they work for me and they work for you, well, now he who has two bosses has none. So what core values what if the core values are conflicting? Who do they answer to? So having a direct hire, you have more control of your environment, your core values to push down to them. I just don't think people think enough about it to really make it top of mind.
I think something else that's really important, you mentioned the daily huddle, you mentioned having the all hands meeting. I position it a little bit like this. If you hire somebody to be a part of your team, and then you have a local team, and that local team is communicating all day long, it's kind of like if you were invited to watch a series. Everybody's talking about a series, so whether it's Yellowstone or whatever, somebody's watching this series, and you only get to peek into the series for 3 to 7 minutes an episode. You have no clue what's going on. And so the only window into our company that our remote team members have, they're living halfway across the globe, the only window into our company is when we open up a screen and we're communicating directly with them.
Yep.
And so we need to figure out, how can we have that window open as much as possible? How can we create cliff notes of the episodes or summaries of it? How can we, and one of the things that you do that you've really leaned on, which I love, is the core values, the company mission, and the company vision, because in absence of any other information, those things create a filter by which I can make decisions as the remote team member. and I can feel fairly confident that if I'm following our core values, I'm following our company mission, I'm following our company vision, I understand some of the policies, that if I'm making a decision on something, that I'm going to get support from the company because I'm doing things in alignment with the main drivers of the organization.
The core values is an invisible manager that helps guide people to make the decisions that they need to make for the company. So without those core values, sometimes they don't make the decisions, or they make the wrong decision, or they just wait for you as the boss to make the decision. And
Yeah.
so it really is important. I know, like, it sounds kind of hocus pocus, like, oh, core values, and but it really is important, and it really does get people to do the right thing based on your values.
When I first start working with clients, I tell them I'm in the entrepreneur extraction business, and my job is to extract them as the entrepreneur out of the day-to-day operations of the business. And you can't do that without giving the rest of your team a single source of truth or one place to go to be able to have that framework to make decisions the same way you would make decisions without coming to you to get the answer. So if you don't want them to be coming to you to get the answer, we have to give them a framework in where can they go to get that answer themselves, and then how do they make decisions. And you're right. I think for me, when I first heard of core values, it was kind of like either an exercise that you sat around a boardroom and around a table and you put together this package and you threw it in the drawer, or it was
Or you
like
made a
some
poster you put on the wall, never to be
yeah
seen again, right?
yeah, or yeah, you walk by the poster every day for 60 days, have no idea what it says because nobody really reinforced it. It's really just a code to live by, to have the people in your team live by, and I think it strengthens the bond in the team because we can call each other out of, hey, was that in alignment with, right? It gives us a framework that we're all moving in the same direction because of these core values.
And I think you, as the owner, a business leader, have to live by the core values, even if you have them, and then you make decisions that are not in alignment with your core values. You need to change your core values, or you need to change your decision.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, but our core values at Empire was like, do the right thing always. And so even if the client or the resident didn't know about something and we knew about it, we would make it right, let them know about it, whether it's giving them a refund or whatever it was. And if you don't make those decisions, then what does the core value do? It doesn't stand the test of it doesn't stand the test, right? Like, the test was, what do you do when no one's looking, right? Well, if
Right.
you have these core values, that's what guides you when no one's looking. So you have to live by those core values.
Yep. Okay, we're running short on time. I really want to get into another topic, so hopefully you can help me condense this. But we I want to help people that are looking to hire somebody to add to the team. I mentioned those two core components of our championship formula, which is defining the position and then hiring that right person. We've talked about how to hire them based on some of the core values and based on the job description and all of that. But you have incredible insight into these two areas. How would somebody go from, hey, I'm overwhelmed, I'm overloaded, I have too much to do, or I had somebody that was working for me and they just quit? Like, how do I
Yeah.
peel off responsibility and make this person successful that I hire? And or how do I replace somebody that just through attrition they move on for good or bad reasons? Where do we go to make people successful in engaging with a service like yours?
Yeah, so I've come up with two ways, and love to hear you, because you probably have a third or fourth way. But it kind of depends on how big the company is, right? So if you're if you're a solopreneur and you're doing everything, and you're starting to get overwhelmed, you hit those 75 to 100 units or whatever it is, and you're getting overwhelmed, you need to really do a time study and write down all the things that you're doing, and write all the stuff that's the low level, low enjoyment, the stuff you don't like to do. And most times, all the stuff you don't like to do are basically around the same type of personality profile. And just because you don't like to do them doesn't mean that everybody in the world doesn't like to do them. There's somebody who loves to do those things. And so that's an easy way to then build a job description and then find somebody to do those things. Alternatively, if you're a little bit bigger and you're running hybrid or departmental, you can say, okay, departmental, you can take that process. So instead of thinking of a remote team member that can take pieces of a process, right? Oh, in this piece we can send to the remote team member. You can actually hire a remote team member to own the process. So for example, at Empire, I had a lease renewal specialist. That was a job role for our company that was virtual team member. The more defined you can get a role like departmental, what I have found, Tony, is easier to understand the KPI for that role. It's easier to understand the disc profile for that role. It's easier to really create a job description for the role. If you're in that tweener stage and you have somebody who's an assistant and maybe they're overwhelmed, I would have them do the time study. What do they like to do? What do they don't like to do? And then you can build a job description based on what they don't like to do. Or you can say, okay, well, I have one assistant and they're doing these three things. Well, now I want to offload these other three things. And maybe it's not one process, but maybe it's 2 or 3 processes that you can give to somebody. Because at 100 units, how many lease renewals or collections or tenant recalls do you have? You can build those. If you try to give somebody everything that you're doing and they become the property manager, I have found that that is a recipe for failure.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is important with that time study, and this is, I'm leaning on the time study, but what we normally do is we create just what we call an accountability chart, and it's just the things that need to get done throughout the business.
Yep.
I have some clients that go super deep and detailed, some that keep it more high level, but we fill this out and we write down all of the responsibilities. I have a tool that we use, and there's a spreadsheet and some automation and stuff that happens with it. But essentially, we document everything that needs to happen, and then we assign that to a role. We never assign it to a person, because when you start assigning responsibilities to a person, you're like, well, I have my Aunt Karen working for me, and she's not really good with technology, so I can't have her do that. And it changes what's possible. And so it's really about assigning responsibilities to roles and then assigning the right people to those roles to cover those responsibilities.
Well said. Yeah, I'm a big fan of having some type of org chart or accountability chart for what the company looks like today. And if you are a single member person that's doing everything, that doesn't mean you have one box. It still means you have to have all these different boxes. And guess what? Your name goes in every box.
Right.
Right. And then what I like to do, Tony, is I don't know if you've done this in the past. I identify the next 5 positions that I want to hire. So I have this accountability chart of what the company looks like today. And then I shade 5 boxes per pink. And as we grab revenue, as we grow, those are the positions I hire next. Mm-hmm. And then I have one that, what does it look like when a company's done? That one's a fun one, but it's more just a thought exercise of how big you want to be, and is that in alignment with your vision?
Sure. Okay, so we've designed the positions, we've figured out the roles and responsibilities, we've created our future, we've figured out the next 5 hires we're going to do. I think this is where I see people get stuck, or this is where I've heard of people get stuck. Okay, I know what I want, and which is more than what some people do. Some people just say, I need help. But if we've gone through the accountability chart or we've done the time study, we say, okay, I know what we want. I don't know how to find that right person. And you mentioned using DISC. So how do I know what DISC profiles I should hire for a business development person, for a maintenance person, accounting? Because I don't have, if I'm a business owner that has never hired for this position before, or I've hired and I've hired my last 3 hires for this position have not worked out, and I want to change things. How do I go about implementing this DISC tool or some personality assessment tool to be successful with it?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is if you don't have a coach, find a coach, and the coach will help you get through that, right? But you have to learn one of them. You have to select one and go with it. Like I said, I'm a disc guy. I don't know anything about predictive index. I don't know anything about red, green, blue, or any. I don't know anything about any of those. All I know is disc. That's all I know. I've been trained in it, and I have been using it for going on 20 years now. Okay. So the first thing is you have to understand personality profile, whichever one you select. You have to understand it. And if you don't, hire a coach. The coach will be able to kind of guide you through it. The second thing, and this is the important thing that I learned, and I wasn't doing this at first. Every job description you build out, you can create all these little bullet points for that job, and then you can then put in what type of personality profile for each one of those bullet points. What I found is if you have a job that's got, I'll just use DISC as an example, it's got 5 Ds, 5 Is, 5 S's, and 5 C's, it's probably not a really well-defined job. You probably have to move some jobs and split the role. Most jobs are going to be, especially in property management, are going to be C's, right? In this profile. And so once you understand what this profile is, then when you create the job role, it'll be like, oh, this is a CS, this is a CI, this is an SC, based on the job role. Then at that point, it becomes pretty simple. You have anybody who applies take a DISC test or the personality profile test, and here's the thing: if they don't match up, I don't hire them unless there's always like what is it? The every rule has
The exception.
the exception,
Yeah.
right? So if somebody's been an accountant for 20 years or a bookkeeper for 20 years and they test out as a I, which is the opposite of C, which is the opposite of what a bookkeeper should be, I'm still gonna say, you know what, maybe I should interview this person because they've obviously learned to become a C when they're doing the accounting thing. So if you have a lot of experience, I'm willing to go over that. But typically, I don't look at experience. Most jobs in property management, I actually don't want any experience. I want the right person, core values, and I want the right personality. We are not sending people to Mars. We are doing maintenance coordination, lease coordination, executive assistant, all these things. I can train you, and I want to train the new dog the new tricks. I don't want to try to train an old dog the new tricks. And I'll find a lot of people like, well, I want somebody with experience in maintenance coordination that lives in the Philippines. That I'm like, first of all, it's going to be really hard to find that. And second of all, every time I've hired somebody with experience, I ended up getting rid of them because they have a certain way that they want to do it and they don't want to do it my way. And typically my way is the right way. Just kidding, Tony. It's always
Well, it is the right way at your business, right?
That's
I mean,
right.
that's the thing. You can have somebody that brings in something that is a really good process, but because it doesn't fit with and it doesn't align with everything else that your business does,
Yep.
it could be really good as a standalone piece, but it's not the right fit for your business because you do everything else in a different way. So it's the wrong piece for this puzzle.
Yeah. Just also finishing up on the DISC thing or the personality profile, it's actually one more step in the interview process before I interview somebody. One of the challenges that I've seen, Tony, is that people will post a job and then next thing you know, they get 100 applicants because it's easy to apply. And now I gotta interview 100 people and I don't have time for that. Well, what we do instead is we put an application out there. And then if you apply, great, you need to take a DISC. If you don't take it, you get weeded out. The ones who do take it, great. Now you have to take the certification exam. If you don't take the certification exam, you weed it out. If you take the certification exam, you go to next. Then you have to take a self-interview. Don't take the self-interview, you weed it out. You take the self-interview, now review it. And if everything looks good, the DISC matches, the self-interview, you answered the personality questions the right way, and you've taken a certification, you passed it, now you get an interview. I don't want to interview 500 people or 100 people. I want to interview 5 people and get the right one.
Okay, I've got to know this. So first of all, about how many people are on your platform right now?
Right around 40,000.
Okay, so we got 40,000 people that at some point have either applied, been hired, or are
No,
currently.
those are people who've created profiles looking for work.
Yeah, right. Okay, so what is your opinion on the speed to hire? So meaning I went out, I created a job description, I've posted that I'm hiring for this position. Does the speed at which we hire make a difference? And if so, should we hire faster or slower to get the
Yeah.
right fit?
Okay, so that's like a trap question here because we're always taught hire slow, fire fast, right? And I believe that you can hire faster. So we can hire within 2 weeks for most jobs. Because if so, think about it. If I cast a big net, 40,000 people, and I put a job posting out there, I'm going to get 100 people to apply. Day one, right? Boom. Now I message them and I say, okay, hey, everybody, here, you 100 people, I need to take disc. 50 people take disc. Out of those 50, 25 are the right person I profile. Now those 25 people, I tell them to take a course. 15 take the course, right? Now I got 15 out of 25. And now I tell them to do an interview. 5 take the interview, right? But I've passed them on the disc, I've passed them on the course, I've passed them on the interview. Boom. If you can do all that, and I truly believe the rate at which somebody responds. So responsiveness is one of our 10-point scoring systems that we have. And if you don't respond or you respond, 24 hours is good, right? Because people do have jobs and they have lives. But if it takes 3-4 days to respond while you're looking for a job, you're out of the equation. So if you do it right, you can literally have somebody within 2 weeks if they go through all the process.
Well, I think that's good that that's in alignment with what I was thinking because yeah, I've heard the whole, hire slow, fire fast, but I think in the market where people are looking for a job, if you do get 30, if people aren't doing it the way you're doing it and they just put out, hey, I have a job opening and I get 100 responses and now I'm trying to figure out how to go through those. Well, if you wait and it takes you a month to respond to people and get
Oh, they're all
back,
gone.
the good ones are gone. So the
Yep.
only ones that are left are the ones that didn't get selected by somebody else that was looking for a job. So instead of looking at the top 10% of the options that you have, you're left with the bottom 50% and trying to navigate through those.
I think the hire slow, in my mind, Tony, doesn't mean how long it takes you to hire. I think the hire slow to me means how many obstacles you're going to put in front of somebody before you hire them, right? So in our hiring process, right, I'm looking at your resume, but once you apply, right, because you have a resume on file, I'm having you get tested by taking certifications. I'm having you see if you're a good fit for the personnel, for the role through the personality exam. I'm having you see if you're a good fit for my company by giving you a self interview based on our characteristics. So I'm doing all of these steps. I'm just doing them quicker to get
Mm-hmm.
people through the pipeline quicker versus like doing it like I think Dave Ramsey, he was like, I take them out to dinner with their wife. Yeah, okay, if you're hiring a CEO, maybe, but if you're hiring somebody to do lease renewals in Philippines, like that's not gonna fly.
Yeah. All right, Pete. I know we could continue this conversation for several more hours. I always enjoy connecting with you, but let's kind of wrap it up. What is there that I should have asked you about? You've got a long, rich history in the property management space. You've now leaned into helping people grow their businesses by bringing on the right people in the right roles. I love that because that your team is your only true asset because without your team everything else falls apart. So what should I have touched on that we didn't, or anything top of mind that you want to close out with?
Yeah. One little thing is when you're the business owner, stop being the superhero. A lot of us have a case of superheroitis, and you touched on this a little bit, Tony, and it made me think of it something, and then we kind of got into a different deal. But if you have a line outside your door every day waiting for people to have you make decisions on stuff, you are going to be stressful. You're going to have a stressful job. You're going to be stressed, and no one's going to do anything until you make a move. So don't pull your shirt off and have the red S underneath and be the superhero. Allow your team to make the decisions, and if they escalate, then redirect. So don't answer, even if you know the answer. Try not to give them the answer. Ask questions to have them come up with the answer, and what'll happen over time. less and less escalations, less and less questions to you, more free time for you. So that's one thing I would add.
I love it. I love it. I always say that every time you solve a problem for your team, you weaken your team.
Oh, I'm stealing that. I love it.
All right. You can have it. Yeah. But no, it's true, right? Every time they come to us, we're creating muscle memory that we're going to solve their problem for them versus like what you said, which is to just ask questions. What does our policy say for that? Get them to find the answer, and then you can confirm whether that's. So I don't say stop giving them a place to get the answer. We need to provide the answer in some way,
right.
but stop answering questions when they come to you directly to solve the problem. Build their confidence by having them tell you what the answer should be. And then as long as it's close, you can build on that and send them on their way where they feel more confident, where they have to come to you less and less.
Yep. Build a culture where they come with you with a question and a possible solution.
Yep.
Could be a cockamamie solution, but at least they thought of something.
Perfect. All right, Pete, I know we're going to see each other down at the Broker Owner in Colorado Springs, but more importantly, we're going to see each other in the Grand Canyon when we are hiking rim to rim. And I just want to take your temperature on that. How you feeling about that?
I am super excited. I'm looking forward to the challenge and to the relationship building that I know is going to come from some of the great people that are going to be there. So I've been walking every day, about 8 miles a day, lifting 5 days a week, and I'm getting ready to increase my walks on the weekends to start building some of that mileage. And then you told me I got to wear a vest, not a vest, but like a pack. So I'm going to go get that this weekend, and I'm going to start that process. So you're my mentor for this, Tony, whether you know it or not.
Perfect. All right, Pete, thanks for hopping on. Thanks for sharing your insight and your wisdom with our audience. It's always great to connect, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks for having me on, Tony. Talk soon.
Thanks for tuning in to the Property Management Success Podcast. We'll be back with another value-packed episode to help you level up your property management game. If you've got something valuable out of today's episode, please share it with a friend or colleague, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so you never miss out on future insights and strategies and tactics. Until next time, here's to your success.